Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Vineyard Underground podcast. This is your host and viticulturist, Fritz Westover, and today's guest is Dr. Andrew Landers, who literally wrote the book on vineyard spraying. So I'm excited that he's joining to share his more than 30 years of research and development on vineyard and orchard spraying technologies. So before we dive into this, just a quick reminder, if you like listening to the Vineyard Underground podcast, please leave a rating and or a review and share this podcast with a friend. And honestly, if you want to share it with an enemy, that's fine too. Just please share the podcast. I'd love to help some other grape growers one way or another. So let's welcome Dr. Andrew Landers. Dr. Landers is an award-winning researcher, author, and currently works as a consultant in precision spray technology. Previously, he directed the Application Technology Program for Cornell University's New York State Agricultural Experiment Station in Geneva, New York, where his focus was on the use of engineering solutions to provide more effective and safer spraying. So, hey, Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Fritz. It's very nice to be with you. It's
good to see you again, my friend. It's been a while.
Yes, been a while. And usually we meet in sunnier climes, but I've decided to take roost over in England, where we've just started the winter, so we've got wet, miserable weather. But,
Well, I hope you have a fire going there. I think I saw you were putting a log on the fire before we got started. So, Andrew, if you need to take a break.
Half an hour, I'll have to go and put another one on.
So what can you tell us about the importance of coverage?
Yes. As you know, there are many, many factors that affect a good and effective spraying. But if we boil it down, there are two or three major factors. And they primarily, one is to do with liquid, the volume you're applying. We no longer want to run a spray, so we run past drip. Those old days are long gone. So we want the droplets to stick to the leaves or to the fruit. And remember, on that aspect, knowing what is your target is half the battle. Is your target the insect on the leaf, or is it the leaf itself, or is it the fruit? And depending if you have triticide you're applying, or is it an insecticide, etc. So knowing the target and then adjusting the machine for it. So besides the volume of liquid that we're applying is hand in hand, then what size of the droplets? And the small droplets will stick, remember, and very big droplets don't. And so what causes the big droplets? Well, the classic has to be not calibrating the sprayer and replacing worn nozzles, because all these nozzles will wear out, no matter if they're made of ceramics or plastic. They will wear away due to hydraulic pressure. The liquid going through, if you're applying at 45 bar, 45 PSI, change my units, a 45 PSI, you're going to wear out the nozzle tip and the type of product you're putting through. Wettable powders are notorious. If you're putting a lot of sulfur through the machine, then you're going to wear out the nozzles. And you put in other powders, it will wear out very rapidly. And so we need to keep control, keep an eye on calibration and check that the nozzles are giving what we think they should be giving. And the second area that is equally important, and sometimes I think in early season, is early and mid-season, is equal, if not more important, and that is the amount of air we are blasting out. And the air, if most growers tend to still use that traditional air blast sprayer, there are three aspects of air. So, and no matter what sprayer you have, the three aspects of air, and one is the volume of air, the speed of the air, and the direction of the air. All these three factors need careful attention. So imagine this coming spring, you start off, last time the sprayer was used was in full canopy, good leaf cover. And so we wanted to get coverage and penetration into the canopy. So we needed a certain amount of air. But in early season, next spring, we'll only have a very small target, very small leaves, bud break, all that type of thing. And so we need to shut down the air. How much air is enough air? I'm often asked. Well, once you've got some leaves coming out, then ideally somebody stands, adjacent to the end post of the first row, and you get that person to see how much air is billowing through the canopy. If you've got vast clouds, it's very interesting to note that it would be the second or third row that gets the best coverage. Why? Because the air has lost its puff by then, and the droplets fall out of the airstream.
Right.
So you can adjust the amount of air quite easily to adjust the volume and the speed by adjusting a number of things. One could be the forward speed. If you go too slowly, you're going to puff a lot of air through the target row. If you too quickly, you're going to wreck your machine by bouncing over rocks and woodchuck hole things. So we need to adjust the machine itself, and we can do that by using the low gearbox on the fan. There's normally 3 positions: high speed, low speed, and a neutral. And so put it on low, because again, last season at the end in full canopy, you might have had it on full fan speed, particularly if you are growing, things like the old Geneva double curtain, or what Australians refer to as sprawl, or you have a nice big Scott Henry and all that type. The trellis is.
What is it about the concentration of the product in the tank versus the actual product rate per acre? And how do you answer that question for growers, Andrew, when they come to you with this, how many gallons per acre, and how does that match with the product rate per acre, and so on and so forth? I know I have my answers. I'd love to hear what you say.
Well, I always remember the famous saying in America that the label is the law. And so if the label says this amount of product on, I think it's very important in these days to realize that's the maximum amount.
Mhm.
The other thing at the other end of the spectrum is to remember, if you have a warranty claim because the stuff hasn't worked, and the product salesman comes up and says, well, what is your application rate? And you look at your record and you say, we went at half rate. You say, well, that's why it didn't work. And so there's somewhere in between. And I think it's this risk versus reward. Can you afford to go below label rate? You can. It is a risk. But again, to throw it into the mix, it's interesting. You're the sort of person that has this attention to detail. You're using a well calibrated machine. Everything is working right. The airflow, the liquid flow, the forward speed, etc. Out of good nozzles. And you're an intelligent person, and you know that if it's going to start raining, you're going to stop, etc. And if you compare your work to your next door neighbor, who may or may not be the sort of person that has just an ordinary Joe driving the machine, no attention to detail, inherited the machine from his grandpa, etc., etc. He's got a worse job scenario. Then it's well worth considering this area. And so, as the ballpark figure, and we saw this a lot with our students, learn about viticulture, they learn about vineyard spraying. Day one, they have their own vineyard, shall we say, or go to manage a vineyard. How much water? In the spring, because your target is so small, you might get away with a much smaller quantity. And we've seen this. We've used recycling sprayers, and it undoubtedly shows that you might only need gallons per acre. We might only use 18 to 20 gallons per acre in the early season sprays, and then it gradually moves up through. So the canopy can only take so much water, otherwise it runs off. So the ballpark figure, a lot of growers do this, 35 gallons an acre early season. Some might even be less than that. Going then all the way through, marching along as the canopy grows, putting maybe 50 gallons max. But the old days on vinifers of putting 75, 100 gallons an acre, they're long gone, hopefully.